What's up, wrestling fans, YouTubers alike? The Iceman here on the Iceman's Return YouTube channel. Happy Labor Day to everybody. And I really need to talk about this interview. I'll have a link in the description box below. Inside Wrestling Truth YouTuber Josh Inside Wrestling Truth from Facebook had an interview one-on-one with Jim Cornette, one of the most charismatic managers of all time. This interview, I think, is a must-see interview for any wrestling fan. It was like a 36-minute interview, and from beginning to end, you were captivated by, Jim Cornette. I mean, he's such a good speaker. He's so fluent, and he has a lot to offer to anybody in the world of professional wrestling. And I think this interview was phenomenal by Josh. I commend him for this interview. I saw his Ricky Morton interview a while back. I like this interview even better. I learned a lot. Some of the things that Josh had talked about with Jim Cornette. It was back in the day with Shawn Michaels, how Shawn Michaels was a whiner. When he was supposed to go up against Vader for the WWF title. Shawn Michaels whined and cried, and he didn't want to do it, and how the WWE basically catered to Shawn Michaels. And this was in a day where Shawn Michaels was not the really the guy that everybody sees him today. He did a lot of things that were, let's just say that you wouldn't have liked him if you knew. But there was a lot of good questions that were asked by Josh, and one of the questions that he asked Jim Cornette, who he thought was his, the best manager of all time, and I have three that I would say are up there, but he did pick Bobby Heenan, and I totally agree with that. Bobby Heenan didn't get a lot of respect from a lot of people in the professional wrestling business on air-wise, but in the wrestling business, in the inside world of professional wrestling, Bobby Heenan was probably one of the most well-respected guys there was in the business. Bobby Heenan was charismatic. He was colorful. It was never a dull moment with Bobby Heenan, and Jim Cornette just put him right up there on the top, on the pedestal, and I got to give kudos for Jim Cornette for doing that. Just a phenomenal interview. It's a must-see interview for any wrestling fan. And one of the questions that Josh asked him, which I found very intriguing, he asked him about, the status basically of the world of professional wrestling, and Jim Cornette answered it in a way that, like no other. He said, wrestling entertainment is still alive, but pro wrestling is dead. And I do have to tend to agree with him, because it is all about entertainment now. It isn't about wrestling per se in general like it used to be 30, 40 years ago. It's all about just entertainment. And I have to totally agree with what Jim Cornette said. And there was another question asked to him about, stars that came up from the indies, OVW, and whatnot. And Jim Cornette had mentioned, there was hundreds that, got taken by the WWF, but there was also hundreds that were just as good or even better that didn't. And it all was to fit the mold of what the WWF wanted these guys to do. And if you weren't big or bad, and whatnot, a lot of times they didn't want you, but they also took you and they wanted to put a stupid gimmick on you, which was more for an entertainment purpose, but it was less value to show what you could do in the world of professional wrestling within the ring. A super interview. you got to give Josh a lot of credit for getting this interview, and you also got to give Jim Cornette a lot of credit for accepting this interview and being the gentleman that he was. I mean, I'm lost for words with this interview because I just it's phenomenal. I learned a lot of things that I wasn't, you know, knowledgeable about. I knew Shawn Michaels, got his way. He was Vince McMahon's pet. Um, I did not know back in '95 that Vince McMahon lost so much money, and I guess that had to do somewhat with Monday Nitro with WCW. But Jim Cornette is one of those guys that speaks off the top of his head, but he is a very knowledgeable wrestling person, as we all know. And they were talking about the Midnight Express with Dennis Conroy, Bobby Eaton, and Stan Lane eventually. And Jim Cornette still professes to this day that the Midnight Express is one of the greatest tag teams of all time. I have to admit, he's right as far as they're one of the best tag teams of all time. And he did manage them, I believe, for like 6 years. And he said, like in 1986, they each made like over $100,000 a piece, which is totally phenomenal back in 1986. But this was when wrestling started to really, really take its course and really flourish. And, talking about wrestling ever being like it once was, he said probably not. It's more of an entertainment business. And once you put a parody to professional wrestling as entertainment, make fun of it, or just things like that, it's hard to recapture the realism of what wrestling really could be in the ring. He also talked about Dutch Mantel saying back in the old days, we would take a punch that wasn't really a punch, but we would sell it. Nowadays, we take a punch that is really a punch and nobody believes it's real. And that just goes to show you by that statement there, the difference of professional wrestling nowadays. So again, the link's in the description box below. Check out this video, subscribe to this channel because this guy does some phenomenal interviews with some great stars of the past. He also does a lot of interviews with indie stars, and this to me is a must-see interview by Josh from Inside Wrestling Truth. So please, guys, check out this interview. Subscribe to Josh's channel, and there'll be more to come, I'm sure. I'm telling you, it's a great interview to watch. Peace out. We'll see y'all next time on the Iceman's Return YouTube channel.